We have been talking about this for a week, that there is an imminent strike which might happen. And finally, yesterday, the Public Service Alliance of Canada, which represents more than 100 and I think 60,000 public service employees, that union, the group union, finally made the announcement that they have not come to any kind of agreement with the federal government, and therefore they are calling strike. So finally, effective midnight this morning, they are on strike, and this includes the Treasury Board of Canada employees as well as CRA, Canadian Revenue Agency. These two form the majority of the employees that we are talking about. IRCC, Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship in Canada, also comes under the Treasury Board as the group. And based on that, severe impacts are going to be seen across various platforms, various factors, and that's what we're going to talk about in this particular video. Welcome to the channel. My name is Kuber. I'm a CICC licensed immigration consultant. This channel is all about Canadian immigration news, updates, things you should do, things you should not. And as I said, we're going to be talking about the strike that IRCC has gone on, or the employees of IRCC have gone on in relation to other federal departments as well. I'm going to take you through these things very quickly so that we get a hang of what we are talking about. So as I said, the union of these federal government employees is referred to as the Public Service Alliance of Canada, PSAC, and they are the ones who have come together and called for the strikes. Now, I have complete solidarity with the workers. I have complete solidarity with the employees who are fighting for their rights, because it's absolutely fair. But what is the strike about? What are they asking for? What are the demands? Which most of you are wondering. Well, to start with, the basis of the demand is the wages or the pay rise or the pay disparity that they have been actually on the bargaining table for the last 2 years, as per PSAC chairman. They have initially been given an offer about 2% which was ridiculous, of course. I mean, pay raise of 2% just doesn't make any sense. Eventually, a third-party commission report gave them an understanding that the federal government should be offering more, and they came back and offered significantly higher, which was 9%, approximately, give or take. But taking the inflation into account, PSAC has put onto the table a requirement, or rather the demand of 13%, 13 point some percent as their pay raise, that what they need. And again, as I said, I mean, absolutely in solidarity with the workers, because fair wages is something which every worker's right is. At this point of time, that's where the whole thing is at loggerheads. Federal government stuck at 9%, PSAC demanding 13%. But so there is a disparity of about 4% in the wages that they're looking for. And they obviously will need to come to the bargaining table again and negotiate and finish this out. In the meantime, there are more than hundreds of locations where the workers from PSAC have been striking out. It's a peaceful protest, of course. I don't see that turning into anything nasty anytime soon. I mean, I don't expect it at all. Of course not. These are very decent people who understand their responsibility. So that obviously is not the concern. The concern is that these are federal government employees, which basically means across the board, there are going to be some very severe implications. This is also one of the largest strikes Canada has ever seen, largest in terms of the number of employees who are on strike. And as I said, it's going to have far-reaching impacts across different various services. But for you and me, since we talk about immigration all the time, where does this matter the most? And that's what we're going to be talking about. But before we get into that, except for the wages and pay rise, etc., there is also some other components that I think probably would be more at stake here. During the COVID pandemic, of course, everybody went home, in the sense like they were all working from home. One of the bigger demands from PSAC workers is also wanting to continue working remotely. They do not want to come back to the office. They want to continue working remotely. Whereas the employers, the government departments, have been insisting that the employees return back to the office to start providing the services. That is another big bone of contention. So I have a feeling that even once the pay matter or the disparity of the pay is resolved, it's the remote working requirement or the demand that the workers have that could be the spanner in this particular wheel, which might create a bigger issue. How long will the strike go on for? Nobody knows. It could be for 3 to 4 days. It could be for 3 to 4 weeks, or it could be longer until, of course, they come to an agreement as to what both parties can agree upon. But with every single minute, with every single day that they are not working, whether the people are not working in the government departments, this is going to continue adding up into the piles and piles and piles of backlogs, not only in terms of services and applications, but in everything else that all the government departments provide. Because while you and I are thinking only IRCC, there are so many other departments that also provide tons of services to the Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and of course, foreign nationals who are currently in Canada. So as I said, at this point of time, nearly 100,000 members of PSAC, who are federal government employees, are now on strike effective today. Of this, the most important ones that you and I are interested in, let's talk about that. First one I'm going to talk about is Canadian Revenue Agency, CRA. Now, this is the tax season. The last date for filing taxes for this year is the 30th of April. So before 1st of May, people should file their taxes. There is no leeway. The deadline has not been extended. People have been told to file their taxes. If they don't file their taxes, then of course, then the penalties will come into play. However, for us, as in you and I, what matters more is SIN, social insurance number. So people who are coming to Canada, new immigrants, newcomers who are coming to Canada, they're already wondering, with all this strike happening, will I get my SIN number if I was to apply? Well, the good thing is, because SIN number is related to tax, tax means money government definitely wants. So that has been considered as essential services. You will receive your SIN. You can get that process. There is no problem with that one. Of course, if you are looking for employment insurance benefits, that will also continue under essential services. Childcare benefits, people who are eligible for that, that will also continue as normal. People will be, sent out those payments in time, hopefully. So as far as social insurance numbers are concerned, that is not an issue. Under the next department that I have for you that we're going to talk about is ESDC, Employment and Social Development Canada, and Service Canada, both together. Employment ESDC, Employment and Social Development Canada, also handles LMIA applications, labor market impact assessment applications, which will directly impact the temporary foreign worker program. So therefore, LMIA applications will be delayed, and they will be delayed to the impact. Let me bring this screen up. Hold on there. This should have been here. Hold on. Yes. As far as ESDC is concerned, they have said, while of course there are more than about 160,000 people on strike, and most of the essential services will be maintained: the Canada Pension Plan, the old age security, the employment SIN numbers. These SIN numbers are deemed essential services, so that will be issued. That is not a problem. Service Canada will provide that to you. In-person services is limited, so please do not go running to the Service Canada offices. In most cases, you will have an issue over there. However, if you need to get your SIN numbers, you should be able to get it at the Service Canada offices. Passport programs are definitely impacted, so that's going to be an issue. Apart from that, if you're applying for your LMIA applications, they will be delayed. For LMIA applications, only the essential categories under the agriculture, truck drivers, those are the two categories which will be processed. All other LMIA applications processing will be impacted, will be disrupted. So don't expect those LMIA applications to happen anytime sooner. Moving on, what else does Service Canada do, which is very important, and that is biometric appointments. Now, if you are inside Canada, your biometric appointments would have already been cancelled by now. If you are going to go to Service Canada for your biometric appointments, they will not be processed. So that's a concern, because biometric appointments not being completed basically means it has a direct impact on your application, whether it's a work permit, extension of a visa, whether it's your study permit if you're applying from inside Canada, or even PR application. If you haven't previously given any biometrics and now you need to give that as part of your application, you will not be able to do it at this point of time. However, outside Canada biometrics, there is no impact on that, because outside Canada biometrics are basically the responsibility of third-party services, which is your VFS, global offices, as well as VAC, visa application centers across the world. So there is no disruption in the biometric if you are going to get that done outside Canada. The issue is who is going to send you the biometric request, because that's what the next one is, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. So, but if you have a biometric request letter, you will be able to get that done. Next one I want to talk to you about is CBSA. CBSA, Canadian Border Services Agency. So let's talk about that one. Right. So they are saying, CBSA is saying that there is no disruption from CBSA side. And why is that? Because, hey, most of the CBSA employees are not part of the strike because they actually got their pay raise. And this is one of the bigger contentions that Service Canada is also having, who were earlier the same department along with the CBSA. And CBSA employees did get a pay raise, so they're not the ones who are striking at this point of time. In most cases, but there are certain sections of CBSA which probably have joined the strike. The other employees who are frontline on CBSA, the travelers, the border entries, those will not be impacted. So if you are traveling in and out of Canada, you should ideally not see any issues or any impact happening over there. However, if, for example, you are importing anything or you're exporting anything out of Canada, those, because they might need certain certifications from, let's say, Health Canada or any other department, those obviously will get impacted. Also, at this point of time, I would recommend, or rather, I would not recommend anyone going to flagpole. If you want to flagpole, because again, that is something which you and I will talk about a lot. If you're going to go to flagpoling, so people who do not know what is flagpoling is meant for people who are inside Canada who want to change their status. People who are in Canada as a visitor who want to get a work permit, people who have completed their studies want to get a postgraduate work permit, or people who will now need to get their postgraduate work permit, the new one issued, and they want it instantly. A lot of these people would normally go to the border, the US-Canada land border. They would flagpole, they will go to the US side, return back, and then apply at the border for their work permit. At this point of time, it has not been said by CBSA that they will not be processed. They haven't said that yet, okay? Because CBSA handles the flagpoling operations. CBSA handles the work permit applications being processed there. However, I am absolutely sure at some point of time that is also going to get severely impacted. So if you're one of those people who are going to be making a trip down to the Niagara border or anywhere in Vancouver to the PSAC borders, then please, it's better to call and check with them if they are still accepting flagpoling applications, because you don't want to be making that trip all that while down and then realize that they will not be accepting your application. So it's worthwhile calling them to check before if they will do it or not. Now, most important, and the one that you've been waiting for, IRCC, Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada. But before I give you my comments and tell you what's happening with them, let's hear it from the horse's mouth.
The services that will remain available for clients. At this time, those using IRCC services will continue to be able to make applications online or by mail. They'll be able to continue to access an online account, and there will be some access to emergency services. Services delivered by our partners as well will also continue. These include things such as visa application centers across the world and panel physician services and healthcare related services that are delivered here in Canada. Services delivered by settlement and resettlement organizations in Canada, including for government-assisted refugees, will still be offered. Settlement services across the country will continue to make sure people have the support they need before, during, and after their arrival in Canada. Government-assisted refugees will continue to receive income support payments, and we're going to continue to provide temporary accommodations for vulnerable groups, including those, for example, who've recently fled the war in Ukraine. Now, I want to focus on the services offered by our IRCC that we do expect to see an impact on. As a result of the labor disruption, we would be at a significantly reduced capacity. Clients should expect to experience serious delays with processing applications across all of our immigration streams. Further, delays could be experienced with citizenship services delivered admissions abroad. Clients with immigration-related appointments will be contacted to reschedule or cancel appointments, and we will also be forced to reschedule all citizenship events. Finally, our response times for those writing to us or contacting us by phone will be significantly impacted. The precise nature of the delays for people who are awaiting visa processing, for example, will depend on the nature of the labor disruption. We do have access to the international network of workers at IRCC who will continue to process what they can with a prioritization, of course, on emergency situations where a person's life may be threatened. I do expect that the impact will be severe, depending on the length of any work stoppage. However, the full scale of the situations where a person's life may be threatened. I do expect that the impact will be severe, depending on the length of any work stoppage. However, the full scale of the disruption has certain unknown facts that make it difficult to assess with certainty the precise timelines or delays an applicant may face.
The reason why I replayed Sean Fraser twice is because he was talking about severe disruptions. Now, how severe these disruptions are going to be, only time will tell. But let's very quickly talk about the IRCC's website. That's where most of this information has been given. The link is in the description, so you don't have to worry about that. The services that are maintained, first of all, apply online. If you have to submit an application, please make sure that you are sticking to the deadline. The deadline, if it is 60 days, make sure you submit your application in 60 days. If you have to provide your additional documents, you have been given 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, make sure you submit it within 30 days. IRCC can be on strike, but hell, you cannot be delaying your documents, your application at all. You have no leeway. Because if you do not provide your documents on time that has been given to you, or the deadline that has been given to you, then yeah, that would not be a pretty sight. So please, just do not be under this false understanding that they are on strike, so you will have an additional time. You will not, and they get pretty more strict whenever this thing happens, and therefore please do submit your applications on time or additional documents on time. Now, as far as the mail applications are concerned, of course there are some applications which you will be able to mail, which you still can. However, there is nobody there on the other side to open those applications. Of course, you can use your online accounts. That will continue. Hopefully their tech team is also working and they do not go on the strike as well. So we are hoping that they stay on board and maintain the accounts, and hopefully you don't see too many outages there. But access to some emergency services, I don't know which one those are, but by and large, you should have some access to any emergency services. I've never really ever realized what those emergency services from IRCC is, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, so many times you wanted to contact them, but you can't. So, and as far as the contact centers are concerned, Sean Fraser himself said that their contact centers will not be operational completely or fully, so you may not be able to get in touch with them. That's not strike. I mean, that's how it's always been. You hardly can get in touch with any contact center anyways. So, all right. Access to information requests, which basically means ATIP. So your ATIP requests, that will be delayed further. I mean, it is already ridiculously delayed. I'm not sure what they're talking about, but they will be delayed. Citizenship events. So basically, if you were going to get your citizenship finalized, those will have to be rescheduled. Those events will not be happening at this point of time. Consular, citizenship, and passport services. Now, this is very, very important. This is something which is going to impact a lot of people out there. I'm going to talk about this in a bit, but for the time being, you may experience delays with citizenship or passport services outside of Canada. You can still access your passport applications and submit a document. But basically, this is basically two folds. Now, passport services is meant for Canadian citizens who are outside Canada. It basically is deemed to be an essential activity because if Canadian citizens outside Canada need passport services, they should be provided. So the consulates or the consulars or the visa offices outside Canada should be able to provide it to them. However, they will also be experiencing delay. But the bigger problem happens is with the passport stamping. So for example, let's say your visit visa application is approved. Let's say your study permit application is approved. Now you are sending your passport to the embassy for stamping. What happens? Based on what it said over here, if the consular passport services, the consular services is basically the consulate services. If they're not going to be processing the visa stamping processes, then your passports may get stuck. And that is where my biggest concern and biggest worry is. I mean, I would rather that they send your passports back without stamping, saying we are not processing them, versus keeping your passports and not returning it back to you anyways because of the strike delays. So this is something which we have to wait and see as to how they are processing this, because I'm not only outside Canada, even inside Canada, to Ottawa. A lot of people send their passports to Ottawa for their visa stampings once a TR visa is approved. I'm just hoping that they return it back instead of holding it and not processing this. This is something which is really, really worrying me, because the impact is going to be quite severe for a lot of people, because if you don't have your passport, you won't be able to travel, right? And this is such a critical identity document as well. Now, the next one is contacting IRCC. Of course, their support centers are going to be experiencing service delays. So basically, you will not be able to, earlier you couldn't contact them, you won't be able to contact them now. The social medias, so not that the social media account was going to give you any answers anyways, but they will also not be giving you any answers. IRCC web form, expect longer response times. Even now, the IRCC web form response time is approximately 2 months. And imagine those going longer. Anyways, extending your stay. So if you're applying for extension of your stay, then that could have impact as well. You have to submit your application online, of course. And that would also be impacted. And therefore, the best thing is to make sure you submit your application online on time, so that you can go on implied status, so that at least you can continue, your implied status, or you would have some status in Canada. Immigration related appointments, now those will also be rescheduled if at all you've been called for any appointment. If you've been called for any interviews for immigration, then those will also be, as I said, rescheduled. Overseas interviews are proceeding as scheduled unless advised otherwise by IRCC office abroad. Now, this is pretty big, because it tells you that outside Canada, IRCC offices may be operating to some level. And that helps, because if IRCC offices are operating to continuing with their interviews, then I'm hoping and I'm praying that they will also continue with the visa stamping processes, because if they can do that, if they can conduct their interviews, then they can also conduct their process their visa stamping. So this is something which we have to wait and see, because this clarity is not there at this point of time. Passport services here indicate the Canadian passport. So this is not meant for foreign passport holders. This is primarily for people who are applying for Canadian passports. So domestic passport services basically is for people who are applying for Canadian passports inside Canada, and passport services for Canadian living outside of Canada is for people obviously who are outside Canada and who are Canadian citizens and who need to get a Canadian passport, whether it's extensions, renewal, then those will still continue to happen. Processing applications. This is where the biggest impact is going to be. There will be limited capacity during a strike, so delays in processing are expected. This includes delays to applications currently being prioritized. Boy, this is going to be the biggest thing that we will be noticing as a problem. Now, what that basically means is, if all kinds of applications are going to get delayed, and they will be prioritizing only some applications. We do not know what those some applications are. Sean Fraser, the video clip that I showed you, Sean Fraser said, for example, if somebody has a life and a death situation, those applications may be prioritized. But basically means everything else will not be prioritized. And how do you even get to IRCC? How do you even get in touch with IRCC and tell them, hey, this is a life and death situation, can you do something about it? How do you even get in touch with them? There is no contact center, or the contact centers will not be responding. Web forms do not get responded. Well, then if something like this happens, then the only way you can get in touch with IRCC would be through your member of parliament. So please, if you have a situation which is extremely urgent, humanitarian and compassionate life and death situation, please contact your nearest MP and have them contact IRCC to get your application processed on a priority basis. So this is basically the impact that you can see that will be happening by and large. Let's talk about the bigger picture. Backlogs. Just about now, after this COVID 3 years hiatus, we were just about seeing that the application processing were coming to some sense, some sanity was there, right? So they had finally gone over the hump. We were finally seeing that the application processing were coming into some control. At least express entry was being processed fast. 3 months, 4 months kind of a processing. Study permit applications, not so much, but visit visa applications are being processed quite fast. If you are submitting your applications through the new portal, we were seeing decisions as quickly as 7 to 10 days in a lot of cases. Spouse open work permits, 4 to 5 weeks. Super visa, 3 to 5 weeks. Those were the processing times. Spousal sponsorship applications were being processed in, the fastest I've seen is like less than 3 months for inside Canada. Outside Canada was about 6 to 7 months. But now, expect all these applications to take a hit on this processing. As far as medicals are concerned, medicals will be, you can obviously continue to get your medicals done because those are third-party agencies not impacted by the strike. But everything else where IRCC has a role to play. For example, if you have to be sent out a biometrics request, you won't get one unless it is automated. For example, you've submitted an application for a visit visa. It's an automatic system. The minute the system realizes you submitted a visit visa applications, the minute it has been accepted into the system, you get a biometrics request. But accepting it into the system and acknowledging it, that step, if nobody has taken it, you may not get a biometrics request. If you don't get a biometrics request, even if you can go to VFS to get your biometrics done, you can't because you didn't get a request. Similarly, if you have to get a medical request, you won't get a medical request. So how are you going to get a medical done? So okay, are you getting the gist of what I'm saying? I mean, this process, everything is going to get delayed here. Visit visa applications, already from some countries, it's taking 1 year. For countries like Ghana, it's taking 360 some days to get a visit visa application process. Imagine now that the backlogs, what is going to happen? Every single day that we are going to be facing this strike and people are not going to go to work, you're going to get some very serious amount of delays. Each day is going to have a very big impact. One thing, the clip that I played from Sean Fraser, obviously it was an edited clip because it's a very long one if I was to play everything. But one thing that he mentioned was that at any given point of time, there are more than 1 million applications that IRCC has in process. I'm not saying that they're receiving 1 million applications. They actually receive much more than that. Per year, they receive nearly 5 million applications. But at any point of time, they have 1 million applications in process that somebody or the other is handling in some part of the world. Can you imagine if there is going to be a complete stop or a huge portion of them are not going to be working, what is going to be the impact on the applications? All kind of applications. Now, where is the biggest impact going to happen? The biggest impact is going to happen here. International students. There is a fall intake around the corner, September, which is the biggest intake. People who have already submitted their applications or people who are just waiting to submit their applications, they are going to be impacted severely. Now, what is going to happen is, I'm hoping that there is an early resolution to the strike. But whenever the strike does get resolved, realizing that study permit applications are a huge priority because, hey, students have to start September. A lot of these resources are going to get redirected by the visa offices to handle the study permit applications, which basically means all other applications are going to take a further or go on a back burner. Study permit applications priority again, which basically means all other applications will have a more build-up on the backlog. And of course, there is already a build-up of the study permit applications. Those are going to get delayed as well. Already the colleges and institutions are really freaked out because, as I said, September is a big intake. They all have so many thousands of international students who have enrolled. Now, if they will not be getting their study permits on time, which basically means students will be asking for deferrals to the Jan intake or to the next year's intake, which basically means the colleges are losing out on a lot of money as well. I mean, what are they going to do with the empty seats when thousands and thousands of international students don't turn up, right? So there's a lot of things at play here. It's not only that the people who are on strike. So let's see how this basically plays out. I know that one of the bigger questions, which I haven't really answered, to be very honest, because I don't know the answer to that question, and that is the express entry draws. What's going to happen with the express entry draws? I guess we will find out next Wednesday, because I do not know the answer to that question. I really tried to figure out the best way to sort of get the answer to that. I did make a few phone calls. I called a few people who are also experts, who are also always looking to who have their ears on the ground, but nobody can really answer that question, because at the end of the day, it's Sean Fraser's. I mean, it's a ministerial decision, right? To start with, first of all, the draws, and then it's not like a lot of people are needed or required to conduct a draw. You don't need so many people to conduct a draw, and there are certain levels of employees in IRCC departments who are not part of the strikes, some managers, etc. Right? So I'm hoping that those management team can actually continue with the express entry draws, because in addition to all that is happening with IRCC with this strike, if they also put a stop on the draws, that is going to be a total bummer. But as I said, I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, that is something which we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully, next Wednesday we will not have a sad face, but a happy face that the draws at least happen. And that's basically how this thing is going to play out. As I said, fingers crossed. Complete solidarity with the workers. I mean, absolutely. As I said, there is no question that fair wages must be paid to anybody, and for people who are in Canada already know that the living costs have gone through the roof. The inflation is going up, and therefore it's quite problematic. And I can absolutely understand what they might be going through in terms of the wages not being accepted, in terms of not being increased. So no problem there. The problem is with the remote working. I'm not sure how that is going to get tackled, because I understand the government is quite adamant that the employees should return back to the offices. I can also understand with IRCC kind of departments where so much of information is confidential, so much of information is sensitive, and how much cost they have to incur in terms of keeping people at home and then letting them operate from there. I know during the COVID, they did figure the system out, because some of the staff, rather a lot of staff, were working from home. But I'm not sure if they would want to continue doing that. So that is something which we'll all have to wait and watch and see how this plays out. Fingers crossed. As I said, I hope this gets resolved sooner than later, so that everybody can go back to work and we hopefully do not see those backlogs. And that's pretty much it. Apart from that, as I said, we don't know what happens with the express entry draw, but there are some questions asking what happens to the PNPs. Well, PNPs is basically what the name suggests, provincial nominee programs, which basically means they are at the provincial level. They are not at the federal level. This strike is at the federal level, the federal government employees. So the provincial level employees are not impacted. They are not, conducting any strike, or they're not going on any strike. There is nothing on the horizon from their side at this point of time. So I would imagine that all the provincial nominee programs will continue as normal. But obviously, if IRCC is not operating, it will have, in some way or the other, it will definitely have some impact on the PNPs as well. The processing at somewhere will probably slow down for sure, not completely stop. But at least that is not something which I can imagine. Apart from that, most of the questions otherwise are quite similar. I think we already covered. Guys, please do not take super chats. We are not going to do doing super chats. Just complete this one. Backlogs are growing. Temporary resident numbers are rising. If the strike causes a pause in e-draw, can that lead to some being left out? Well, I'm not sure what you mean by some being left out. Some will already be left out, because the number of temporary residents in Canada are much more in number than the permanent resident quotas or slots that are available. So Sean Fraser himself has said it on previous occasion that not every single temporary resident who's in Canada is going to get an opportunity to become a permanent resident. That's a known fact already. If people haven't realized that, then they should wake up and smell the coffee, because this is already a growing concern. But I'm not sure which ones are you referring to specifically. But it's already a known fact that temporary residents in Canada, all of them will not become permanent residents. There are not enough spots available. In addition to that, I don't see anything other questions that I've not already covered. But yes, there's something very interesting I want to talk to you about, and that is an upcoming debate. You know what happened on our Facebook group very recently was that we've got into a bit of a debate. Some people who are calling Canada a scam, some people who call Canada a dream. So there are people who are in favor of Canada, there are people who are against, and this has been a very interesting conversation that has been happening on our Facebook groups for the last 3 to 4 days. So I have decided to hold a debate, which we will be doing it on this Sunday. What's the date on Sunday? Sunday being 23rd of April. And I will be inviting 4 to 6 people from the Facebook group who have been commenting, negative and positive. So we will have 2 or 3 people on each side, one in favor, one against. And we're going to have a very healthy debate in understanding whether Canada is a scam or Canada is a dream. Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? Should you be looking for other options? Should you forget about Canada? Hey, so please don't forget to sort of, put some sort of a reminder somewhere, and do tune into this channel at 10:30 in the morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday, which is the 23rd of April, when we will have this debate and figure out if Canada really is a scam, or is it really a deception, or is it something that you really need to spend more time on making sure it happens for you. Well, that's all for me for today. This is what I wanted to bring to you today, the strike that IRCC has gone on, and hopefully this doesn't stay on for too long and doesn't impact in a negative manner. I mean, it is impacting in a negative manner. We just hope that it gets resolved sooner than later so that we can go back to normal lives. Thank you so much for joining in. Stay safe, take care, and I shall see you next time. Bye.